In the most divisive of times, the great debates rage on. Who was the best Batman? Was the book truly better than the movie? Did Han shoot first? Nerds with opinions will seek to answer life's greatest questions.
Hello there, fellow nerds. You are listening to Nerds with Opinions, episode number 141. As always, I'm your host, Matt Holden. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by returning guest, Cynthia Borges, and we are embarking on a spoiler-laden review of the 2024 horror film, Longlegs, starring the incomparable, the unhinged Nicolas Cage, directed and written by Osgood Perkins, the son of Anthony Perkins, aka Norman Bates from the Psycho films. This movie is weird and disturbing and really just gets under your skin. We review it in depth. Like I said, spoiler alert right here in the intro. We're going to get into spoilers. So if you haven't seen this movie, go watch it and then come back and listen to this. If you have seen it, then embark freely. We're going to spoil it. And we're talking about Longlegs today here on the podcast. I am back with returning guests many times over now, Cynthia Borges. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm doing well.
Good. And we are discussing, I'm just going to say it right now, a spoiler-laden review, comprehensive discussion on the newest horror movie that's kind of taking over the cultural zeitgeist. It's got a lot of hype around it. Longlegs, starring one Nicolas Cage. You and I went and saw it together, as horror buddies do, and it seemed like a fun one to talk about because there was just, I don't know about you, but after we watched it, we talked a little bit about it, like walking out to our cars. Yeah. And then I kind of sat with it, thought about it more, and I was like, I ruminated on it. And I was like, that's when I asked you, I'm like, hey, you want to get on the podcast to talk about this? Because I do think it's going to be like a divisive movie, and there's a lot of like different takes you can have on it.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Because Kirsty had seen it the day before, and so I texted her like, when I got home, I'm like, so how about that movie?
Yeah. So let's start right off with that. Let's just give like initial thoughts. And I'm just going to say this one more time for people that are listening. This will be in the intro as well. This will absolutely be full of spoilers because I think you would agree. I don't think you can really talk about this movie in a way that doesn't involve some spoilers. Like for instance, when I came home, for the listeners, for context, I was talking to my wife Heather, and I just said, I don't know if you'll ever watch this. However, if you do, I don't even really want to get into certain aspects of it because I think it's going to maybe not spoil, even if, I was like trying not to hit the actual like twists and stuff, but it's going to color your experience because I think I was really enjoyed going into it cold, other than I had seen a trailer.
Yeah, that's how I went in seeing it.
And it unfolded in a way that I did not expect. And so I really think that you would have to just really skirt around it. So we're going to just go full spoilers. So if you have not seen Longlegs, watch it, then come back and listen to this. So let's now give initial thoughts, and then just no ratings, no deep dive. Just tell me initial thoughts and whether or not you enjoyed it. And then we'll start the deep dive.
Initial thoughts. It did not go where the movie didn't turn out how I thought it was going to turn out.
And expand upon what you mean by that.
Oh man, I thought it would be scarier for me than it ended up being. And I think some of it is because, like, no joke, like the day or so before I saw when I was scrolling through social media, it was just like, here's the actual heartbeat of the actress or whatever. It got up to like 170 beats per minute when she saw Nick Cage's
Yeah.
face. And
then they saved that. Apparently that was his last day on set, and they saved that. Like, they filmed all the other stuff with him. Great marketing ploy, by the way.
really?
Putting that video out. Yeah.
So
And then
I didn't end up watching it because I was afraid that it didn't occur to me that they would save face as well, like, and just not show what she saw. But I was like, okay. And then like, well, shit, if they do show it, I don't want to see it, like I want to be surprised. And so like, I'm assuming your heart rate is going that freaking fast. He's got to look freaking supernaturally terrifying. What I got was Nick Cage looking weird as shit.
yeah.
Like, it was jarring, but it wasn't like, I don't know, I expected, I don't know, like kind of uncanny valley, like something that just makes me like,
Okay. And then when you said also like it wasn't what you expected, are you also like meaning some of the themes that play out in it that have become pretty
like,
predominant?
Yeah, I honestly don't know what I expected besides some like detective occult serial killing thing. But I did not expect what it was. And that's not a bad thing. Like, I didn't hate the movie or anything. I would probably watch it again, just like we were talking about, to like pick up on maybe things that we've missed. But like, I didn't hate it.
Okay. All right. I enjoyed it. I also was a little surprised with where it went with some of the themes in particular. And I leaving it, there was a couple things that I was like, I needed to ruminate on, think about. I even had to do a little bit of Google sleuthing, and we'll talk about what aspect you and I were both kind of discussing immediately upon leaving the theater. Because it seems like we were kind of on the same page with like, well, I think I got most of it except for, but I definitely enjoyed it, and I did find it to be scary on a certain level, but then more so, I thought it was very creepy and unsettling, and it got under your skin. And sometimes
I was jealous of your jump scares.
Yeah, there was the jump scares in this movie. There wasn't a ton, but they got me. And the first little bit you see of Nick Cage, just the way that it's revealed, and then the music and everything, like it got me. So in that regard, I really enjoyed it, because I actually think that even though, I love a rare film that you watch it the first time and it's like, holy shit, that was so scary. That's really good. But I think sometimes like the like get under your skin and just make you feel really unsettled almost sit more with me, like or sit with me longer, and on kind of a different level. Because I have went back and rewatched films like that, and they still tend to have a little more effectiveness. Whereas sometimes like a super just like big scares film, you go back and you watch it again, and it might still be kind of effective. You're like, oh, that's still gnarly, but it loses its bite just a little bit. Is something I've noticed, and there are exceptions. I still watch The Exorcist, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so fucking scary. But, so you mentioned it before. There was some really significant and interesting marketing for this film, and there was a very clear choice. I looked into it. Osgood Perkins, the writer and director, his whole deal he made with Neon, the company that put it out, was, I only want to do this, and only want to have Nick Cage involved if you're not going to show him at all. I don't want to have his face be part of any of the promotional material, or I'm out. And I think that was really great marketing, because it became a whole thing, where it was, and there are a lot of downsides to film marketing in the social media age. Mm-hmm. But if it's kind of like the anti-spoiler, and then that spreads like wildfire because of how things do spread like that on social media, it kind of still got a lot of attention without spoiling, which I thought was really, really smart. But a couple of things I was going to list real quick that they did as for marketing. Obviously, they did that video you mentioned where measuring I'm going to just Micah Monroe measured her heart rate when she saw Nick Cage in the Longlegs costume and makeup for the first time. That was one. But then they made billboards with phone numbers that you could call, and then it was pre-recorded, just super creepy messages of Nick Cage.
What?
Either
I missed that.
Just saying weird shit to you or singing you happy birthday, which birthdays are a very big theme in this. We'll talk about that a little later.
I am so jealous that I never, I would have. Oh.
I didn't call any of them, but I saw some videos where people were playing as they had their phone on speakerphone, and oh my god, they're so creepy. He's like,
that would have been fantastic.
Hey, I hear it's someone's birthday. That's just and then they also made a fake website that was very Blair Witch Project, where they made a website that was trying to pass off that the Longleg murders were real, and it was this film takes place in the 90s, 1995 is what I saw online, and in
Oregon.
And in Oregon, yes. And so they made the website look like a mid-90s website, which so cool. All that to say, what do you think about that? What do you think about this kind of guerrilla marketing and then not showing Nick Cage's face?
Okay, so I'm not gonna lie. Apparently, all the cool marketing that I'm really into, I didn't get to see.
Okay, so you just knew about the heart rate thing and not showing his face.
And the trailer, when someone asked me about the trailer or whatever, I'm like, well, it seems like a detective thing. I guess Nick Cage is in it. I only heard his voice.
Yeah.
Which I kind of figured it was sort of intentional, because if he's the big bad, you wouldn't want the reveal, or at least it's a good way. The whole Jaws thing, the anticipation to see your enemy, you don't see them until the end. Oh
yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that, by the way, but we'll get to it a little bit later. But I liked that, and you're right, it's very Jaws.
But yeah, I wish I saw the billboard. I would have called those numbers. I would have been sufficiently creeped out, and I totally probably would have checked out the website too had I known about it. I just was I didn't know about the movie too far prior to us talking about going.
Yeah.
So it's not I went full deep in figuring it out, but from what I saw, the heartbeat one had me intrigued, but I was so worried that I was going to spoil myself that I stopped watching. So
yeah, no, that makes total sense. I kind of already gave my thoughts on how this kind of worked in the opposite way of a lot of things where that come out where it's okay, did you see the last Spider-Man movie? No Way Home?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah. Oh my gosh, that was the worst kept secret in all of film. And then, of course, as soon as it comes out, then all these dorks online that are fans, we all knew there was going to be the other Spider-Mans in there, but it's just let us experience it. And I know a common thing now that is a knock on film trailers. A lot of people don't like to watch them because they feel like they're spoilers. One thing I can confidently say with this, I did watch the first trailer. It was, just saw a random horror movie. I don't even remember which one it was, like earlier in the year. And I saw that and I was like, okay, this looks interesting. And I can confidently say, now having seen the movie, they absolutely do not spoil anything about what this film becomes. And maybe that's why your expectations were a little skewed.
Oh, definitely. And like, usually I like, maybe not so much with horror films, because I do like the build up. I love getting jump scared. Like, like I said while we were there, I'm like, I gotta relax as much as possible, so when it happens, I'm there jumping right out of my seat.
Yeah.
But like, and I usually hate when trailers don't tell me what the movie is about. They'll just be like, here's this cute little scene, here's this blah blah blah. Except,
oh, I agree. Sometimes they can be so vague that you're like, okay,
why would I watch this? I know nothing about
there
it.
has to be a hook for sure.
But the thing with this is, despite like you not really fully knowing what it's about, you kind of get the vibe. You get it.
I think there is a hook and the hook is the more like serial killer horror aspects of it.
And that's what they kind of give you. And then what happens just doesn't stay in that.
So I think that's a perfect segue. Let's actually talk about some of the themes, motifs, and horror subgenres, because this actually ends up becoming a like sort of multi-horror subgenre film. So starts very much in the lane of serial killer horror. It gave
Silence of the Lambs.
Yes, like 100%. And then along the way, there starts to be some kind of supernatural elements brought in. Specifically, it becomes very much a cult film, and in kind of the vein of like An Omen or Rosemary's Baby, where there's this like Satan aspect. There's these occult aspects in terms of themes, and that is like a motivation for the Longlegs character to commit his killings. And it's not just, it's not occulty in like the sense of like a
hooded figures.
Well, I was gonna say like a hyper realism based story, and then it's just somebody's like a devil worshiper. It literally goes into a supernatural thing, which is interesting because I definitely feel that, like what we were alluding to, going off of simply just the trailers, it felt very much like a realism-based serial killer movie.
Yes.
And I don't think that that's a bad thing. If anything, it was just unexpected. But then what is revealed, and we'll get to the there's twists. There's one big one, but then there's another twist. When it gets to that, I think that makes sense, and the twists I don't think would have worked quite the same had it been just a straight up serial killer film.
I agree.
So thoughts on these kind of themes, motifs, and horror subgenres?
I like them. I like we've discussed, like the little bit of supernatural mixed in with the horror film is like it. We'll like it. It works, and like it works really well I don't know, like I'm so bad at explaining things, and yet I'm on a podcast. No, just like, yeah, I think it's easier, weirdly enough, to believe what's happening when you add in the supernatural aspect to it.
I think that also makes this set apart a bit from, I think there's going to be natural comparisons. We're going to talk about some of the influences here as my next talking point. But there's going to be some natural comparisons, but I don't think it's going to be like well, that's kind of like it's good, but it was a bit of a like Silence of the Lambs ripoff or whatever. Because then
cannot say any of those things.
Yeah, by the end it goes into definitely different territory. And I enjoyed that. I also enjoyed that it was very unpredictable. Like we were saying, yeah. I would have never seen that coming, because it also doesn't. They do a good job now. And that's we were talking about it. I think this is one where you would get even more out of it if you watched it a second time, which I plan on doing so whenever it comes out on streaming. I don't know if I'm going to go back to the theater necessarily, but I do think you would go back and you'd see like that there's the breadcrumbs are spread out there, because there was some things that, like we were talking about after watching it, where it's like, oh, well then, yeah, then that thing makes sense, because they kind of like teased what was, eventually going to be. So yeah, I liked it. And I liked the fact that it was clearly a sign of Osgood Perkins as a filmmaker being able to play in multiple sandboxes. And I think, whether people love this or hate this, I don't necessarily think it's going to be, go down as like one of the greatest horror films of all time, but I think it's gonna move the needle enough, and it seems like it already has. That
I don't like. Sorry.
Oh, all I was gonna say is I just think that he's gonna get the green light to make more films, and so I'm very excited to see like what else he has in store, because I thought that this ended up being very creative.
Yeah, like I don't like, sort of like you were saying, I don't think it's gonna be like in the top 10 of anyone's sort of like best horror film ever, but I feel like it's one of those that you can't necessarily forget.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Just because, like, yeah, like, how do I explain this movie? Like, yeah, there's like some Silence of the Lambs vibe to it, but it doesn't stay there. And yes, there's like some, you were saying the Omen and Rosemary's Baby like vibes to it, but it also isn't that.
No, not at all. I mean, honestly,
and so like you can say, hey, it's got some aspects of all these different things, but you don't go in and watch it and feel like, oh yeah, I can see where they took from this or what. It's completely its own like entity, while also going like, if you like this, you might like this ish. I don't know.
Yeah, no. So and that's this. So you've set up another good segue. Let's get into like the influences on the film, and or kind of perceived influences, and then some of the other movies that it reminded us of. I did see that Osgood Perkins, he came out and said that one of the biggest influences that he would cite was Seven, which makes total sense to me.
Oh.
And I could see that a natural extension of that. It also reminded me a lot of Zodiac, which is also made by David Fincher, in terms of the serial killer horror aspects.
Yeah. Well, now that you're saying this, I'm like, oh yeah, I see that.
Well, and then frankly, I think that there can be something said about, with Seven in particular, about this. I think there's a similar vibe with the villains, in particular about how I'm gonna kind of jump a little bit to the ending here, and we won't go super far into it because I think it is a twist. But how there's kind of like a, oh well, my mission's done. My work is completed, and my life no longer matters because I've already inflicted the chaos and violence and evil that I planned on doing. There's kind of some parallels there.
Oh yeah.
And I think there's also some parallels in like some of the twist reveals, as well, in terms of like who the villain is, where they've been the whole time.
Bro.
So I could, when he said that, I was like, Yeah, actually that makes more sense in terms of a serial killer sort of thriller horror movie than even Silence of the Lambs does
Yeah.
a bit.
Yeah. Well, like when you pull the like Silence of the Lambs is just like the one on the top of my head when I think of it. But as soon as like as everyone heard, as soon as you said seven, I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah, it makes sense. I do so, but so does Silence of the Lambs. There had to have been some influence there because even just positioning Micah Monroe as a young female FBI agent that's mentored by an older male FBI agent pursuing a sort of like androgynous, serial killer who is very flamboyant and just bizarre. Also a bit of like a crafty or like artistic person in like the most fucked up way. Like there's some parallels there for sure. So I think I can see both those.
Oh yeah, there's definitely both, but like yeah, like I said, until you said it, like it makes sense that it's taken from like Seven and Zodiac and like things like that. It just like as soon as you said it, like the little puzzle pieces in my brain are clicking together and going, oh my God, you are so right. There's like you can see that.
You can tell that he's like a David Fincher fan for sure, because it's, even though I think this is way more horror than Fincher's, work is, like his stuff's a little more thriller, even at its gnarliest. Just the kind of like the way that they both do sort of like atmosphere and that kind of like slow burn storytelling that starts to unfold and then becomes like it, as it unfolds, more is revealed
bigger
about
than you imagine.
Yeah, and then I think Seven is a great comparison as well, because think about it, by the time that things are really revealed about the John Doe, the villain, things are also being revealed about the cops that are working the case, namely Brad Pitt, and how it like the killer crosses into his personal life, and that happens in this film too. Yep. It also reminded me of did you watch any of True Detective, the show, specifically the first season?
No.
First season's phenomenal. I would recommend it. But
I feel like I've seen like bits of episodes because Kirsty had it on.
Okay.
But I never sat down and watched it.
It's really good. I can't say that about the other seasons. It's an anthology show. I tried to watch the second one and I just couldn't do it. I've heard that the other ones were a bit better, but the first one is phenomenal. But it's definitely also kind of like David Fincher influenced, and so it reminded me a bit of that, and then it had a little bit of like a folk horror, a cult sort of parallel thing that reminded me a bit of about where this went.
Okay.
And then, like I said, they couldn't be any further apart from each other, but just the a cult reveal, and then sort of like once you realize like, okay, this we're firmly in this occult devil worshipping subgenre, that there are, I think, some similar vibes in terms of like how I reacted in terms of just like like I said, under the skin thing to The Omen or Rosemary's Baby. But so let's talk about the acting. We've kind of flirted around it. Let's get into it. It's not a huge cast, and I don't think clearly with how scene chewy a guy like Nick Cage is, and he's not even really in the film a ton.
But he is memorable.
So let's talk the kind of the main standout folks. There's a small supporting cast, but You've got Micah Monroe as Agent Lee Harker and Nick Cage as Longlegs. They're the two leads. Blair Underwood is the lead agent in charge and is Harker's mentor. And then Harker's mother, played by Alicia Witt, Ruth, she's in it and plays a very significant role. And then there's a great cameo by the young actress Kiernan Shipka, who plays Carrie Ann. And listeners, you might know her from Sabrina the Teenage Witch. She was in that. And she's in a really great, really recent, fun comedy horror film called Totally Killer. Good recommendation if you haven't seen that. It's really fun. Back to the Future meets Halloween meets kind of Scream. Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
It's sick. It's really good. If you told me that a time travel horror movie would actually be good before I'd seen that, I'd be like, I don't know about that. But anyways, really like the heavy lifting is done by Micah Monroe, Nick Cage, Blair Underwood, and Alicia Witt as Mama Ruth. Just some thoughts on the main cast.
I like the cast.
I did too. There's some like kind of not super well known, some people that were kind of played against type.
I'm not really familiar with them. Except Nick Cage, but like
Blair Underwood, this is totally playing against type. Usually he's like he's more known for dramatic roles, or he's kind of, handsome middle-aged guy. And so he's done like, let's see here. So he's most well known for Deep Impact, a movie called Just Cause, Rules of Engagement, with is like a military drama thriller, Gattaca, which is a sci-fi movie. And yeah, he's a character actor, but just looking at his filmography, he's not exactly not his first thing really isn't horror. And so I think they were definitely, doing something different by having him in here. And he's been around for a really long time, but I was really impressed with him. Yeah.
I didn't know that he didn't really do horror. I thought he did a good job.
Yeah. And then it looks like the woman who played Ruth, she's been acting since she was a little girl, but she's been in a lot of really small parts, and just like doing character acting, or even like really kind of like B-level films. She's been in a few bigger movies, but really, really, really small parts. And whew, I thought she was great, dude. She was upsetting.
Yeah.
Very creepy. And then what I thought was really fun and interesting, very much, and it with where this movie goes, it makes perfect sense. We don't see her for a really long time. We only hear her because the first bit that she's even present is via phone calls with her daughter. And she seems normal-ish, but like that there's something off. But I kind of just took it as maybe they have a bit of a cold relationship.
So what I started thinking before, like, you actually see her, is that like, because the conversations are so weird and you never see her have the conversations with her mother around anyone else until her mentor was like, hey, go see your mom. I was like, is this the reveal where we find out she was dead all along and she has some mental problem where she's talking to her dead mother?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why my brain was going, oh, maybe. It just like,
so I think that's a tiny bit of a leap, but not a ton, because I do think, and that's so gonna throw some praise on Micah Monroe. So I was stoked that when it was announced that she was in this movie, because she's in It Follows, and I know we were talking about that, you hadn't seen it. She's incredible in it, and I think she's really good in this. She does a really great job of just perpetually like acting like she's just
Terrifying.
disturbed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's a huge leap for you to make that, because she kind of acted very like idiosyncratic, uncomfortable the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's vague whether it's because there's a bit of a reveal that she could potentially have some low grade psychic abilities. And this is before it goes full supernatural. So this is like a little bit of dusting of supernatural first. And so to me, it was like, okay, so what? Clearly she has some weird stuff from her childhood. And and first, that's, you really only put that together just from her conversations with her mom. And the hints about her childhood are through it, and you don't put it together until it's actually revealed. But my vibe on her initially is she like is her quote unquote psychic ability, is she just very like strong, empathetic, sort of inclination. And so she feels very strongly, or maybe is she even kind of like slightly on the spectrum, and then she's super smart because of, you know, being maybe like just borderline autistic or something like that. It's very vague, but there's something not quite right with her. Yeah. And so I think, how, like, she could have a ghost mom. Who fucking knows?
Who knows? And like, just like in details to the acting, like we were talking about afterwards, is like, she seems like contained. And I think it's like the character, just like, cause she's uncomfortable all the time. So she just like sits there, doesn't really fidget, doesn't really move. She just like is there and contained, and sort of like tries to make herself sort of like as small and unnoticeable, is like, despite being noticed, because it seems every time like the spotlight was put on her, she's just like, please stop looking at me. And then like in the juxtaposition, you've got Nick Cage, who's very expressive in the limited time that you have with him. Like,
this
over the top, I guess.
This was a perfect role for him. And it was written so well because I think that they could play on his natural strengths of going really big with characters.
Yes.
And, you know, whereas if it's not written correctly, that style of acting, that's why people like love to say that he's an overactor. And I do think that he can be, but if the writing sucks and is not subtle for him to like kind of play off of and be those big moments, yeah, of course it's going to come off as overacting. But I didn't feel like it was in this. It was...
No.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, yeah, I was like just agreeing that, yeah, like how he acts, like the sudden outburst, and just like it fit this character so well. It made me go, yeah, I could see this guy being a serial killer.
Oh, for sure. And if anything, I think his, I guess maybe we can talk about, you know, that the reason why they do not show his face in any of the promotional material other than to kind of get attention is he's wearing a lot of prosthetic makeup, and he's unrecognizable. And it's not purely just, you know, enhanced prosthetic makeup from like his eyes, nose, and lips. He's like ghostly white. He's got like white and gray, long, stringy hair. He does not look like Nick Cage at all. And he hardly sounds like himself either, because he's doing this really weird, high, creepy voice.
Yeah. But like at the same time, you know it's Nick Cage because like, I guess the inflection and how he talks, like. Yeah,
and then he has a particular style of acting for sure.
Yeah. And that's what makes you go, okay, this is Nick Cage. If for somehow no one, you find someone who's never seen Nick Cage act, give him this movie, and then say like National Treasure, they're going to be very confused and probably not believe you that it's the same guy.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing is I think he gets pigeonholed as like, oh, he's the overactor and he's like really eccentric guy, but he's got a fascinating career. And because
totally.
he is at times one of the worst actors I've ever seen and one of the best actors I've ever seen. And he's done these, I mean, a lot of people forget he's won an Academy Award. He's done like these really serious dramatic roles. He's done like over the top action movies. Now this is him, playing in horror, and this isn't his first horror film. And so he's kind of done it all. And we were talking about that. We were sitting next to this really fun gal. And we were talking before the movie started about that, where and I think in the best way possible, he will do anything.
Yes.
He's been in so many films and so many different types of movies. And I think that is part of like his mystique, is this thing that could be perceived as a negative of like, yo, this guy will not say no to a project, is
but
kind
at
of
the same time, you can't put him into a box though.
Exactly. I think, like I said, people try with the whole overacting thing, but it's like, then I would go, okay, well, point him to some of his earlier work where he's a lot more subtle, or even this movie, even though he goes really big at times. Why I think his performance really worked in this is he does go to extreme big, large overacting levels, but some of it's really subtle. Is particularly there's instances of him talking on the phone, and he's playing it a little more low key than he kind of goes peaks and valleys, and obviously the peaks are really, really big. It kind of crescendos with his he gets caught eventually, and Harker has a interrogation with him, and then he has this really long scene back and forth with her that's just amazing and so fucking weird and upsetting. But I think that's a perfect example of the extremes that he's going in this, because he's like, some of it he's like just being kind of weird and sort of quiet, and then he's like screaming, and it's
and I think that like it works because like not only is the character itself like unsettling, but like what also unsettles you is that you don't know how they're gonna react, which like, and that like is uncomfortable. Because, like, you expect when you're having a normal conversation that they're not just going to yell and scream and, like, in the middle of it. Especially in interrogation when they're acting calm all of a sudden. And then all of a sudden they're doing Hail Satan.
Yeah, well, then even, he says Hail Satan a few times in the movie. And some of it's like, the movie literally ends with him doing a Hail Satan, and he like blows a kiss, but it's like, Hail Satan! Like, so it's, some of his behavior is really upsetting and unsettling, but it's because it'll be like jovial and like fun and boisterous, and not all of it is like, oh, I'm being really bad and mean. I think that's what's the most upsetting thing about his character.
Is that like, he's like, he knows he has a job or whatever, but doesn't mean he can't have fun, because he's clearly having fun. Like, he like literally enjoys talking to young children and being all, and it, I don't know if like, it's creepy. I don't know if like, oh crap, I lost my train of thought. Like, if it was young girls specifically, but like how he approaches and talks to them about their birthdays, he seems actually like invested, like, oh, I want to get to know you. We can just like, granted, like, no.
But no,
like,
and then that's what adds to it
like,
being creepy, is because he comes off like a child predator, by,
100%.
Oh, hey, little girl, let's talk about your birthday. And like, oh, God.
Yeah, like the one scene where like he was, the spoilers, we already told you.
I mean, we're already spoiling, yeah.
Oh, yeah, no. But like when he went in to get the supplies that he needed and he starts talking to the young girl behind the counter, I'm just like, Oh God.
Jesus Christ. That fucking scene. Let's talk about that scene just for a second. Go ahead.
I like how it ended where he's just like being creepy and it's like, oh, when's your birthday or whatever? And she just goes, Dad, the creepy guy is back.
No, but when he finally gets up and like talking to her, and then just inexplicably he's like playing peekaboo, like covering his face. Like, what the fuck is that? But no, it was effective because it like he's just really, he like skeezed me out the entire time, and it totally worked. Let's talk about some of the technical aspects of the movie, because great acting, but let's talk about some cinematography, some sound design, the production design, like costuming and sets, and then the writing and direction. Let's talk a bit about that. Thoughts?
I like I'm not good with the technical aspect, but like how some of the shots were like set up. Like, I don't know how to explain it.
The one that it was of her like waking up in his bed, and it's like above, but then the camera turns upside down, and so the shots up, that fucking blew my mind.
Yeah. No, also I was like trying to fight the instinct to like also go like turn my head and being like, okay, we're trying to figure out what's going on here. But no, like that was pretty cool, and just like how I guess some of the shots were lined up, like when, I don't know, it's like subtle things, like at the beginning when they're going after the original suspect that they were going afterwards, and her partner's going to door to door, and she just stands there, and you've got like the two sort of houses, because they all seem to be conjoined or whatever, like behind her, and she's just getting this feeling. And she's leaning like more towards one or whatever, stuff like that. Or like when I don't know, I just liked it, and so I can't explain why.
No, that's great. No, I agree. I really liked the cinematography. I liked that they also, it was a very stylistic choice, but I liked that they did some very kind of strange things, like anything that was supposed to be in the past was in that like square frame.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. Yeah. Like old film, or, you know, like an old video camera. I really enjoyed that.
Fantastic.
I liked sorry, go ahead.
No,
you're
I'm
good.
sorry.
No,
like,
no, it's all you.
You
go
brought
ahead.
it like, no, because that way, you know, like at first I didn't know that it was a flashback, because I was like, oh, this is a choice on how you're filming this.
Yeah.
But when then it went to normal, and every time it did that, it was just like, oh, and like it makes sense, because that's more like, it gave it more of like the back in the day vibe, like when she would have been younger. So
it matches the time period, because we're to assume that she's like what, mid-20s, she's like 8 then, so it's definitely early 80s. Or like late 70s, I guess. So depending on how old she is, it completely matched that vibe. I also dug there's heavy influence on or heavy emphasis, put on the color scheme in this. All the title credits, all the promotional materials, red and black. And there would be like cutaway scenes of just weird things that then it was revealed like what they were. Where it'd be like, like what appears to be someone's, you know, face, and they're wearing like a hood, and there's blood running down their face, and then, or, you know, like a pile of snakes, and it would just do these really quick like single frame flashes of weird shit. That also felt very David Fincher to me. Like, you know, everybody knows about the Fight Club, like quick flash to the penis, you know. That seems like an homage to him, where like, okay, we're doing single frame, just stuff just to like throw off the, you know, the viewer and unsettle them. And I like all that. I think it's effective, and it brings me into what the goal of the filmmaker is. I would say the same thing about the sound design. And I think that's why the jump scares happen with me. It had really intense sound design, like anything that was knocking or banging around was really freaking loud. And it's interesting. I don't understand when you see a modern horror film. Older horror film, okay, sure, the technology wasn't quite there, but a modern horror film, if your sound design isn't like cranked to 11, what are you even doing? What are you even freaking doing? If you're gonna, have a door close, have that sound design be uncomfortably loud.
Yeah.
And this movie, like they knew the assignment, as the kids say. So I definitely enjoyed that for sure. Any thoughts on like the production design, writing and direction, any of that stuff? I have some thoughts.
Can you elaborate on what that is?
So production design is like sets and costuming and makeup and stuff.
Oh, well, the makeup was fantastic for Nick Cage. Let's be real. Like, that was. I don't like.
Yeah, he
close
both
my eyes
looked
and
like.
look at think back on the movie and go like, oh yeah, it's a Nick Cage. I just go, and that guy, he's creepy.
He both looked like a real person that just is very strange
like
looking.
The dolls that he makes.
Yeah, he looked otherworldly, but it was that weird uncanny thing of like, okay, so he could just be a very strange looking real person, or he's kind of monstrous, but then it's like it's monstrous in a
normal sort of way. Weird.
Like, yeah, he looks like a real person that like got microwaved or something. It's really upsetting. I don't know. He's like kind of like a melting wax figure.
Like now that we're talking about I could be wrong. It could just be my mind making things up right now, but I want to say that there was like a transition from like a doll face to his face. Wasn't there? Or am I like, to be fair, it could have just been my mind putting shit together.
I know they made. See, I thought that it was a doll face to Harker's face, but maybe they did it more than once.
This would be a great time to rewatch.
Yeah, I can't remember. Though I will say one thing about this, and this isn't a knock. I think it worked. A lot happens in this movie, and it's jumping timelines. So that might have happened, and I'm not remembering.
Yeah, I can't say for sure, but like, there's just something like, first off, there's something real unsettling about dolls in horror films to begin with.
Oh, like, God, yeah.
I didn't have a jump scare, but I was.
This is almost more fucked up, though, because I don't like dolls either. These are human-sized, child-sized dolls.
Not only that, but it does
somehow
the whole
way
like
worse.
porcelain doll thing where it's like made after their image and uses real human hair and stuff. Like,
so you can attest to this because we were sitting right next to each other when the first doll's revealed, and then they're like the forensic scientist. Which, quick shout out, I know we already talked about actors. I don't even know who you are, forensic scientist, but you are so good at being a total freaking creep. And, oh God, that scene was just the worst because he was like kind of really
into it.
Yeah.
He was very much, had much admiration for the quality
Admiration's
of
a
this doll.
perfect word. Yeah. He was like, there was reverence in the craftsmanship of this doll and how like amazing it was.
A creepy point to like, all right, yes, it's good craftsmanship, but please stop waxing poetic about it and stop saying that it talked to you in your ex-wife, mom's, someone's voice.
It was mother's voice, which
mother's. Okay.
Well, I'll have something to say about that because we talked about this. I have a theory on that that maybe led to his creepiness, and we'll talk about it when we talk about twists. But yeah, when it's revealed, and of course it would have real human hair, but just my thought instantly when he said, "Oh, and the hair is human." I was like, that's from a victim, and that just made it like it's got to be right. It made it just
totally has to be.
Oh God, just horrible. So yeah, the production design really worked for me, and with the dolls as props, I agree with you about Nick Cage's.
I hate it when his eyes opened.
Yeah, no.
I knew it was gonna happen. happen. I knew it was gonna happen. It's still unsettling and creepy.
I thought it was also I liked the move, and it was all just basically done in editing and basically production design. I liked the move of, this is a period piece, but we're not going to come right out and be like, top of the movie, Oregon, 1995.
Yeah.
You only pick that up. Actually, it's ambiguous until the movie's kind of gets going, because like we talked about, it actually opens up even further in the past, in what would be early 80s, late 70s. But the thing that set it off for me was the clothing, the cars, but then they made a really overt reference to the 90s Mariners, which I loved, being a baseball fan. And it popped us because he's like, Blair Underwood's character's talking about that if he meets Harker and like she's his new mentor, new agent, and then he says, oh, I need somebody to talk baseball because my wife won't talk about it, that's my life. And then so I was like, okay, so the way that he's talking about the Mariners like this, and just going off the cars, like this has to be like early to mid 90s, and so that makes total sense. So I liked stuff like that, and then you pick up like dates and location purely just from shots of like forensic files and criminal reports and whatnot. I liked that. I thought that was a really clever way of doing it.
Because like it never, like, as weird as it sounds, it never fully occurred to me that it was like in the past, but it was just something I knew. And it's probably because I picked up on all the subtleties.
Well, that's showing and not telling. And sometimes that's better storytelling. Yeah.
And once again, like big major, like if I had doubts before, payphones. Usable payphones.
Rotary phones as well.
Yep.
House phones. Yep, that's another one. Okay, so let's talk about the twists in here. And there's a few. The first one being, I don't know if this is a twist, but it's a reveal that sets up a twist. There are weird metal cylinders inside the dolls' heads, and they put together that with every crime scene, they find some clues, because I guess the other thing that I should have said made me feel like this movie had some Zodiac influences.
Oh, was Longlegs the coded letters? Yeah,
it does like these encrypted letters, and Harker eventually starts finding, like breaking the code and whatnot.
Okay, but like, this is something like. He helps her break the code, though. I at least that's what I felt like. Granted, she's like doing the work. She's putting in the time to try and figure this out. But it's not that until she gets that card that has the little poem thing about the standing in the sea or whatever. And it's
from Revelation.
Yeah. And it has the like the symbols and stuff underneath that. Like, she was getting nowhere with it, and then this happens, and then she starts to pick it out. And I think it's because... So, like, and then when her mentor was just all like, oh, how did you do this? And she kind of just... For me, it wasn't... When she said, oh, I just, like, worked on it long enough, it felt more like, I don't want to tell you that the serial killer was in my house and left me a note on like more or less how to decipher this.
So there's a twofold thing. And so I guess let's get into one of the twists, because that kind of explains what you're getting at.
Okay.
So there's these cylinders. I'm saying cylinders. These like steel balls, these orbs like in the dolls' heads. And they figure out that every crime scene, there's a doll involved. And and then it is then revealed, like they're running out of time, like because he kills in a pattern, and he's been doing so since the 60s. He kills in a pattern. He's going to be killing somebody soon if they don't catch him. And then it intersects with, there's some weird connections with her. It's revealed that he came and visited her as a little girl, but she lived. So then her boss, he says, you need to go talk to your mom about this. And then it's revealed that Longlegs is and has been living in their freaking basement.
Dude, that one I
such
did not see coming.
blew my mind.
I thought, because her mommy was hoarding shit, I thought when the cockroach came out, I was just like, oh, she's hoarding food too, isn't she? It's real bad down there.
Making
Don't
her
go down there because you can't go down there. There's so much stuff. And instead, it's,
100%.
A serial killer.
Making her a hoarder was such a good cover for that reveal.
Totally.
Because if that house was immaculate, and there wasn't like all this visual distraction, I think maybe you would have been able to pick up on it. Or they would have had to be a lot more careful with any shots of her house and then any shots of him in his like weird little creepy lair. Because I think you might have put it together, but that there's just so much stuff in her place.
There's so much stuff. And then the lighting of the two places are vastly different. Definitely.
So then it's revealed, basically, she has housed him and has become his accomplice because Harker finds out along the way that there had to have been an accomplice because basically there's no DNA, and it appears that he has talked the father into the, like, basically every time a father, he visits... and then it'll be like a child's birthday, and then the father kills the entire family. And from how it appears, like he's talked these people into, killing their entire family. And he actually hasn't done any of the killing. It's all suggestive. But then they figure out like he has to have an accomplice. So mommy is the accomplice, and it's revealed that, of course, that when he came to visit Harker, mom cut a deal and, and basically put him up, helped him out with these killings that's when it's revealed that there's an occult thing to it, that are in the name of Satan and not just purely in motivation, like Satan's involved, and that's where it goes into full supernatural territory.
The words and phrases he uses, like the man down the stairs or man downstairs, and he's downstairs the entire time, but that could also allude to the whole devil thing.
Fantastic double meaning, written so well.
It was fantastic. And then you've got the who are you? A friend of a friend.
Yeah,
and
friend
like
of a friend.
depending on who's saying it, like, oh my god, because Longlegs says it, and it's just like, well, who the hell are you friends with? I feel like you're a complete liar. And then you find out like his accomplice is more acceptable as a friend, and it's all like, oh, who sent this? A friend of a friend. Like, it's just, they're not lying, they're just,
So it's a reveal on multiple layers, and it starts with this interrogation. They catch Longlegs. Harker interrogates him. He starts, basically like unfolding all this information, not completely, but to a certain degree, and basically kind of implicates her mother and is like, oh, well, you need to talk to your mom because, she knows more than she's let on.
Something happened. Talk to your mom.
And then he kills himself in the most horrific and brutal fashion. He smashes his face to bits against a table.
So that reminded me of Hereditary.
Yeah, Hereditary. And did you see Talk to Me?
No.
Oh, dude, you would love Talk to Me.
But I missed it.
Well, spoiler, there's a face smashy scene in that too.
Oh no, I'm pretty sure I'll still be surprised when it happens. Like,
I don't. You won't see it coming.
Yeah, I've seen it Hereditary multiple times, and every time I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Preservation that makes it.
And then there's that, and then just like anything to your face in particular is it's really horrific. And then so that leads Harker to her childhood home, and then her mom basically, she's got her doll. So there's been a Harker doll.
As it turns out.
Yeah, and then when she finds out that Longlegs is dead, She goes, well, okay, then you're going to be safe. Shoots the doll in the head, and as that happens, the orb or whatever it is gets shot, and some purple smoke comes out, and then purple smoke comes out of Harker's head. And so the suggestion is, and this is what I had to do a little deep dive, because we talked about that. That was the thing I was like, okay, I mean, I'm like, so how are those connected? So it's as straight ahead as we saw it from what I found. And so, and then, but the other suggestion is that, so that's like basically black magic. Mm-hmm. Black magic, but that also, that goes back to the thing that you were talking about with like, he basically gave her clues along the way because he wanted to be caught, because this is kind of his like, his, you know, magnum opus murder, killing, you know. He wanted to be caught, but then the other reason why she figured it out and why she has psychic powers is
because she was connected the whole time.
Well, that, and that she's got the power of Satan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's got the power of the dark side. And if to make it, you know, if they couldn't make it any more clear that like we are firmly in a Satan horror film, occult horror film, they do these quick flashes where a demon Baphomet-esque figure shows up really quick, just like looming over the scene. I saw it once real quick. It's just a flash. And then I was like, I leaned over here. I'm like, did you see Baphomet? And you didn't hear me. And then
I didn't even see it, honestly, until the second one.
Well, yeah. Then they go back to that well again. And it's like, it's a lot more clear that time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's, a few twists upon twists, but the big one is that, you know, that Harker met Longlegs. She's the only person to survive him, only child to survive him. And, you know, he's been living out of the basement. But the movie ends with things are already in motion with the final kill, which is her boss's family, who we met early on. And basically, you know, Mom comes to the door as a nun that works for the local church.
Yes, and that's like one of the cool things is like after all this, you finally like kind of see how she's an accomplice and see it like in motion and actually working instead of just having the exposition. Once again, I think this film did really well about showing instead of telling. Like we were talking about earlier.
Yes, 100%. And she brings a gift from the church, which is this creepy doll that somehow is a 1-to-1 replica of whoever the child is in the home, and it's their birthday. And then they have a little birthday party and bringing this doll in because of whatever black magic. And it sounds like they purposely kept it a little vague. It then makes everybody just completely complacent and to the situation, and it makes the father want to kill everybody. And I liked the little twist ending that Harker, you know, manages to kill everybody, you know, because like everybody's too far gone at this point, and then the only thing she's that's left to do is she can save the little girl. Kills her mom, has to kill her boss because he's just blindly going to
slaughtered his wife in the kitchen.
Yep. But she runs out of bullets, and so she can't shoot the doll. And then I love that ambiguous ending of like, what's gonna happen with the little girl? Like, in theory, if that connection, I mean, yeah, but I like that they did that and then didn't show it.
Yeah, because like, what if by the time she had to go get bullets and reloaded her gun and came back or whatever, the doll disappeared and there's someone else taking over? Like,
when you got to think of like, what are the implications of that? Like, does the cycle repeat? Is that little girl taking her place because she survived, but she has that connection with the doll like Harker had? It's really fun. And then I loved that then it cuts back to which this really doesn't make sense, especially because how he killed himself, but it didn't need to. It cuts back to Nick Cage in the interrogation room. He's staring right down the barrel of the lens, and he says, "Hail Satan!" Then he goes and blows a kiss, and he cuts to credits with, what was the song that we were like, this is a weird song? It was fucking weird.
I'm not good with names of songs. I'm not gonna lie.
I can't remember, but it was really like, it was very...
This
out
is
of
your
place.
choice?
It was very out of place.
Which
So
makes
yeah,
sense for the movie.
and I think that's maybe what we were getting at, where it's like, the twist was nuts. That blew my mind, but I would have never ever guessed that it was like, what's in the dolls' heads is basically
Right?
black Satan infused magic. And that mom's involved in this really like very elaborate, but albeit pretty original, way of killing people.
Yeah, it was interesting. Oh, and going back to the medical examiner, I know we were talking about it after the movie, that the reason why maybe he was hearing stuff is because he said, he's like, I've been working long hours, I haven't had a lot of sleep. And we're thinking like maybe that made him susceptible to the black magic and hearing his mom's voice, and
because
praising the doll's construction to no end when it's like, bro, please stop.
Because there's one survivor. Now I can't remember her name. I keep wanting to say Carrie Ann. There's got to be a little bit of a nod to Carol Ann from Poltergeist. It has to be, but I want to say Carol Ann.
So I thought of it like Carrion, like roadkill.
Yeah.
That's how I remember it.
Yeah, maybe. I failed to bring that up. So that's kind of the first like bit of information that we get, and it's also very clear that she's still being influenced by the doll and by Longlegs, because her doll's hidden away. It hasn't been, and she managed to survive. She's been in this mental institution for years and years and years and years since she was a little girl.
Basically catatonic and just not doing anything.
And as soon as they bring her doll out, and then Creepo starts working on it. It opens its eyes, and she then like wakes up. She is responsive and communicative, but then Longlegs can induce his influence over her again, and she kills herself. And
she was happy as peaches to do it.
Yeah, so I think that there is evidence there that just being in proximity to this, you can be influenced, because we find out along the way that's why the fathers killed their family, is because they're told to do it. So there's this, and and then correct me if I'm wrong. They actually, I think it's the mom, Ruth. She even say that like it's Satan that's telling them.
I believe so.
Yeah, not even Longlegs. Like he's just like a vehicle for Satan's will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's basically.
Which is a great that makes that ending even better, because it's not about Longlegs. It's about the will of Satan.
Yeah, and it was interesting. Like when they first brought up the whole like, oh, it's a devil worshipping cult or whatever. They're like, like Charles Manson, and you're like, and it's like, oh yeah, maybe, and then you're like, oh no, like legit.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. This all worked for me, but do you think that the twist and the ultimate reveal of like what is really going on, that it's not just a straight ahead serial killer horror film, do you think that it was too convoluted at all?
No.
I don't think so either. Even though I had to do a little bit of a deep dive, I don't think it was like, not to dunk on another movie, but for instance, when I saw Us, that Jordan Peele film, I was like, I don't get this movie at all. I did not. I did not understand it. I had to do this deep dive, like watch all these analysis videos to even wrap my head around like what he was trying to say in that. And I think he's an amazing creator, but I think that's his weakest movie. And even though I did a little bit of sleuthing just to kind of, it was more to confirm, I'm taking that as like, this is presented as straight up. There's not like an allegory or like the smoke's a metaphor. Like that's just
not smoke.
That's just black magic, right?
Yeah.
But I can see where I bet you if there is a criticism of this movie, which I don't share, but I would bet you it's going to be one of two things. Either overrated, like not as good as the hype built it up to be, or it's that ending is too convoluted. So I was just curious if you thought that.
Well, as someone who didn't get a lot of hype, like I said, I saw a trailer that I believe you sent me and part of a video where they were promoting it. I and because probably the more guerrilla style
marketing,
advertising and stuff like that, promotion, I don't feel like you could probably say it's overhyped. Maybe I would probably lean more towards convoluted in the end, but like personally, I can't agree with that. Like, cause like maybe I just don't have a big brain and I just accept everything.
I don't know. I just thought it was in an effort to be different and original, and it wasn't. I didn't find it convoluted, and I didn't find it.
I don't think it's I don't think it's like overstated and stuff. I don't think it's like. I think if they went bigger and like dipped farther into the supernatural to where like they took out, because it feels more like a magical realism thing than just like straight up.
Okay, yeah.
Here's like the supernatural stuff. I feel like if they dive deeper into the supernatural and was like, here's all this, and all of a sudden you're seeing like, I don't know, demons and shit, that I would go, okay, that's unbelievable. That's a little too far.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I like that. I agree with that. And especially that, there's only a few flashes of a demonic figure, Baphomet, Satan, whoever we're saying that is. And all of this reveal doesn't come until the very end of the film. I like that. I agree with you, where it's first and foremost this serial killer horror mystery, and then this is it unfolds to be something a little bit more, whereas they could have revealed that early on and it would have been a completely different movie. I think you're right. It would have been supernatural first and then realism second, where I agree with you. I think it's more of a in the pocket kind of like gritty, serial killer thriller at first, that's just kind of ratcheted up a little bit in terms of the weirdness, but then the weirdness is paid off when it's like, oh, well, there's some like funky Satan worshiping shit and going on. Yeah. That's why there's, some uncanny stuff. But all right, I think it's time to rate this sucker. And then we'll do the classic out of 10 IMDb scale, and then once we rate it, I'll quiz you as to what you feel like, what you think this is currently sitting at on IMDb, which I am sure it will change. That's always a fascinating thing where you usually see like either, because of marketing and word of mouth, something will spike up and maybe dip down, or it'll dip down and then spike up. But so we'll be going off of where it's currently sitting. One thing I can tell you though, let's take a look here. So they do this thing on IMDb where, in terms of like what's being registered as like, recently watched, recently rated, then that becomes a list of most popular current movies, and it's a top 100. It's number 1 right now.
Oh, really?
Ahead of Twisters, Hillbilly Elegy, Descendants: The Rise of the Red, the original Twister, Deadpool and Wolverine, which that seems a little silly because that will definitely be number
That's
one.
not
It's not even out yet technically, but you know, there are these dorks that I see this on Goodreads too, and it's like, you're dive bombing the freaking rating algorithm by like people that will give stuff ratings before it comes out. It's like,
Yeah.
you're the worst. So yeah, just there's another movie that's way off. That's number 10, Gladiator 2. So I think this must be algorithm based, where it's also just kind of like, is it in the buzz? But Longlegs is currently number 1, if that means anything to you. So I'd love to know what you give it out of. What would you give it out of 10? Excuse me.
So I'm not entirely neutral on it.
Do you want me to give you my rating while you're thinking about that?
Yeah, because otherwise it's going to be crickets.
That's bad. That's bad podcasting. Dead air.
No,
No, I'm giving you a hard time. I'm gonna go 7. I'm gonna go 7 in terms of just like a mixture of enjoyment and kind of a critical look at it. I think I could, if I was going purely off enjoyment, I'd go an 8. Because I really had a good time. I'm glad that we saw this in the theater. I think it was that loud sound and everything. It was effective, and it was fun going with somebody that was, you know, wanting to see it too. But yeah, I think it was really good. But yeah, I'm feeling a 7. I don't think it was great.
I think I'm at a 6.
A 6. Okay, that's totally fair.
Yeah, because like I mentioned this when we walked out, that like I think my brain threw me out of the movie because one of the first things Nick Cage says in the flashback is like, "Oh, it's your birthday," or "I have something for you." Oh, and then he says something about his long legs, either like, "Oh, it's a good thing I'm wearing them," or "I forgot my long legs," something like that. And I'm just sitting there for like the next 5 minutes or so going like, what the fuck does that mean?
See, that kind of stuff, that's interesting. And I do think that this will be a divisive film. I 100% think that. I think people will enjoy it or dislike it. And now it seemed like you rounded the bend to, you know, relatively liking it. But
yeah,
I could see where the weirdness of his characterization and the lines that he's given, I could see where some people would be like, this is too weird. I don't care for this. Where it drugged me in because I'm like, what is this guy's freaking deal, dude?
I also expected him to have like longer legs than normal. I'm not gonna lie. It was just regularly proportioned, so there's that. But yeah, so like that kind of threw me out of it for a while. But like, it's definitely one that I'll watch again just to see like what I can pick up now that I know where it's going.
Oh yeah, I agree. I'm very much looking forward to rewatching this at some point. I want to put some time between. That's why definitely. I also wouldn't be motivated to go back to the theater necessarily. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is a movie I like even more upon watching it a second time.
Yeah. I won't know until I do.
Yeah. And
I think
I might be wrong on that, but
yeah. And it's just one of those like, I didn't hate it, but it's not one that I immediately want to go, I think I'll watch that again. It's like, if someone's like if you went like, hey, it's time, I want to rewatch it, I'd be like, all right, I'm down.
Yeah. So what do you think, what would be your guess that this is, what score do you think this is currently sitting at on IMDb?
Okay. Taking in the nonsense that it's currently number 1, I'm going to do...
Well, it's number 1 popularity. That doesn't necessarily...
Yes. Say that people are rating? Okay.
That doesn't necessarily... It's not reflective of, purely just the rating, if that makes sense.
Okay. I'm going to say a 7.8.
A 7.8. You're pretty darn close. It's a 7.2.
Oh, shit, really?
Yeah.
Am I psychic?
Oh, my God. Longlegs is manipulating you. There's a doll of you somewhere. Yeah,
Kill
29,000 people have rated it thus far. So 7.2 average. You know what's interesting? On Rotten Tomatoes right now, the tomato meter has it 245 critics reviews, 86%. But this actually would lend credence to your score, where the IMDb score was more reflective of my score, because right now the audience score with 1,000 plus verified ratings is 62%. So a 6 out of 10 would match that. Well. And so, and honestly, I think that's where it's going to float. I think some people are going to feel like, yeah, I'd give this a 6. I think some people are going to feel like a 7. There's going to be those weird outliers. Like I did see on the ratings. And that's always like, there's some people that either really dive bombed this, not too many. Like it's got a lot of 7 and 8s actually. There's actually more 8s, but it's averaged out to that 7.2. A lot of 7 and 8s, some 6s, and then there's a few 9s and 10s. I think that's a little much, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it sits like that. And I do think that I haven't seen, of course, all of the horror movies this year, but I just recently saw Maxine, and I really loved those first 2 films. But I gotta be honest, I think this might be better than Maxine. So I think it's one of the best horror films I've seen this year thus far, or one of the ones I liked the most. So I gave Maxine a 7 as well, but I do think this one is a little bit better. If I was gonna give it a decimal, I think it would be higher. But I haven't seen that new A Quiet Place. I know that's another new horror movie. But any final thoughts?
Not that I can think of at the moment.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is Hail Satan. Face smash. All right. That's a perfect way to end it. I don't think we can do any better. So let's call it right there. Thanks for hopping on and talking about Longlegs.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks so much for checking out the episode, nerds, and thanks to my guest, Cynthia Borges, for joining me and talking about Longlegs. If you're digging what I'm doing here on Nerds with Opinions, make sure you're following me on social media at nerds_opinions on both X and Instagram. You can find me at Nerds with Opinions on Facebook. You can also find my YouTube channel, Nerds with Opinions, and maybe you're listening on YouTube. I'm going to put the episodes on YouTube now. You can find me at Nerds with Opinions there as well. If you are listening to this on Spotify, if you would rate this podcast 5 stars, preferably, that would be really, really great. It helps me out a lot. Same thing with Apple Podcasts, but you can rate and review there. So if you give me a positive review, good rating out of 5 stars, that would be really, really, really helpful as well. It helps get the attention that is needed to break through the algorithm for this podcast. As always, I'm your host, Matt Holman, and thank you so much for listening. You've been listening to Nerds with Opinions.